We are live.
Hello, and welcome to our final session. How can we redesign our cities, nations, governments in the smart cities, blockchain, and other technologies, but as well, especially with humanity touch. And I think one of the things, from one of the panels today that I want to highlight is the panel of that I love particular is humanity-centric. I'll start with that because this is our last session after three, 2.5 very busy days. And I want to welcome everyone that is still with us from all over the world. We've been over close to 150,000 views in the last 3 days, just on LinkedIn alone, YouTube alone. But as well, we've been having quite a good engagement as well on Twitter and on LinkedIn and Facebook a bit less, but we're not pushing so much Facebook. So I want to thank, first of all the speakers, all the panelists that have been with us in the last 3 days, and especially our special partners, the World Smart Cities Forum with Jaewon, Peter Chun, that has been unstoppable and working 24/7, and of course Debra Ruth, that is our special partner in terms of the Roof Global, and as well on the impact, and as well a lot of energy, and as well coordinating a lot of the panels we have. Today for a session, we brought as well our jewel Okwechime, that is joining us, I think, from Nigeria as we speak. That is as well someone very special in terms of dealing with digital, dealing with boards, and dealing with a lot of social impact. I think we lost it for a moment. And of course, I welcome as well my dear friends and partners, Hilton, Supra, Vice Chairman of our organization, and Serafima Semkina, our Vice President of Business Operations. We should have, hopefully, as well, Dr. Kirk, the President of the American Blind Association. I would love to have him here. Let's see if everything goes and he can connect. So I think today, and I won't speak much, I want to pass the word more to all of us and interact as much as possible. One of the things that I want, and I think it's really important, that I think these last 3 days told me, there's a lot of work to do to make sure that a lot of these topics, when it comes to business, when it comes to technology, when it comes to inclusion and social impact and dealing with the challenge of COVID-19, how can actually we do this in a better way, and especially engaging more people. One of the things I've been finding is really, and I think that's why we start creating the Open Business Council Summit, was the lack of understanding about the challenges. First of all, what is digital transformation? What is really very basic things that are really key? And there's a paradox, and I want to start with this paradox and go through the panel, is that in all these panels, we've been discussing business, we've been discussing strategies, we've been discussing some of the biggest trends, and actually some of the things that we are touching in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of the biggest foundational technologies of our times, the topics of fourth industrial revolution, how society 5.0 as well can create new rules for us. But in the end of the day, we still have a huge problem with inequality, with digital divide, with, of course, going through a massive crisis that is the COVID-19, and as well how we can actually make a parallel bridge towards all the different knowledge that we have, the empowerment, for instance, in the previous session with Javed Jaffrey and Liz Quevedo. One of the things we discussed is that, for instance, just starting with these numbers, 1.1 billion people they are disabled, and then around 3 to 10 million people in the world that are creative industries related. So we have a huge amount, probably around almost 50% of the world population, that is actually struggling with a lot of challenges that are related with digital. And this is, of course, an Open Business Summit and Cities ABC in parallel with the World Smart Cities Forum and Roof Global. And one of the things we've been trying to do is, okay, can we go from the top to bottom down and create solutions that we can actually use now, not in 5 years or 10, but you can use now. And I want to start with that to wrap up all the topics of the summit. And I want to start with you, Debra. So, Debra, you've been unstoppable in terms of first as someone that is a champion for disability, digital inclusion, but you are as well someone that has a debt in your family and struggling with that. But you are as well a huge component of work that you've been doing, both with global organizations like United Nations, but as well with big corporations, and as well with the Paralympics organization and others. So let's start with that, because I think this is something that very few people speak when it comes to these big events and these big summits. And we always forget this kind of silent majority that is a huge part of the whole population, because if you put on the top of 1.1 billion, and I know that you're working on the 1 billion projects, we have as well people, there are elderly people, and all the things. And then we go probably to half of the world population. And as well as the world population is getting older, and then as we young people as well, we have all these challenges that we're facing, both in advanced technologies that are almost biohacking humanity, but at the same time, we have all this digital divide that is coming. And of course, yesterday we had 4 robots in one of the panels, or at least creators of robots and robotics. And of course, we had massive cities here speaking. But yeah, it's how we take this. So I want to pass to you, Debra, and have some of your insights to start.
Thank you, Dinis, and thank you for letting us be a partner. We're just so excited to be part of this, because we speak about these topics all over the world, all the time. But the thing that I really liked about what we did at this conference in this 2.5 days was we really, really focused on humanizing technology, because technology is great. I love technology. But the reality is technology needs to work for humanity, for human beings. And you talked about all the different people that are disenfranchised and our efforts with billions strong. We know there's over 1 billion people with disabilities in the world. And then you start adding to those numbers people like myself. I'm a person with a disability. I have an invisible disability, and I bet many of you also are people with disabilities, and you don't even know you're part of this community. And by the way, nobody wants to be part of our community, because the world sees disability as a negative, and it's not. If you have disabilities, it means you're a human being. So why not use technology to enhance whatever you're dealing with, instead of what we saw whenever we heard Dave Still, the blind poet, speak the other day. And so many people have said to me that that one session really, really touched their heart. I know it touched me, but not only is this man at the time having to deal with the loss of his sight, he's having to deal with society telling him he can't work, he can't drive, he can't take care of his family, he's not a man. It's ridiculous. Why would we do this to people? And also keep in mind the situations that Dennis talked a lot about, the different people that are disenfranchised, but refugees, a large part of our refugee population are people with disabilities, because when you're fleeing from a tragic or an awful, horrible situation, a lot of times you're becoming disabled, but also post-traumatic stress disorder. Even during this COVID-19, when all of us stayed home, sheltered in place so that we can stay safe, people, the suicide rates are way up. And even defining what it means to be a person with a disability. The Americans with Disability Act defines it one way, and then we have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that also defines it a little differently. So we need to get the definitions right, but we need to stop deciding that certain people don't belong in these conversations. It's ridiculous. So kudos to Open Business Council for making sure that humanity is included, and that means all of us are really included, and that we're taking a look at some of these major digital divide issues that are widening and widening. And thank goodness for the work that Peter's doing with the smart cities, because we need cities to be smart. We need them to be inclusive and accessible. And every time we make efforts to make digital accessible, we make sure that we're looking at it from the ICT. We've got to make sure technology is accessible, but we also need to make sure that we have access to high-speed connectivity so that we all can participate. So there's so many moving parts, but first of all, it takes leaders wanting to talk about it, wanting to talk about how do we humanize technology? Why are we building technology if it's not benefiting humans or the inhabitants of the world or this earth, this living planet that we live on? So thank you so much for letting me make those comments, and let me make sure I don't go on for too long, but I appreciate the leadership. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. And I think it's an honor to have you here, Debra, because I think it's about how we can actually create an integrated society but as well how we can actually get the different players to have this role. And as well, we have all to learn, like you said, in the end of the day, we are all humans, but as well how we create the new journey and we take this. So Peter, as our partner global, and someone that is working with a lot of smart cities and a lot of frames for the cities with major governments worldwide, and you are actually part of the South Korean government. So it would be some words that you have how to create these solutions and how we can actually make it more happen, especially right now with COVID. What would be we saying, especially as a summary of all the work that we did in the last 3 days, but as well the work you've been doing and you continue doing in your different assets and different platforms that you've been building?
Well, actually, first of all, it's my pleasure, and really enjoy this event and 3-day events, and I'm really glad to be a part of the Open Business Council events, and so excited to have the renowned people around the world be a part of the panelists and also speakers. So I think that I just learned a lot from different voices, because the concept and definition of smart city before COVID-19, and now people like is seeing at the innovation and also the smart city in general. There might be a little bit of the development, because so more people now trying to better understand what's really going on the post pandemic. So to me, it's kind of good opportunity for making the leadership of the government, the central government, as well as municipality, have the better insights about what they need to do to bring up the more collaborative work together with public sectors and private sectors. So those are the actually good firework, and from all the different perspectives and during this event for the last 3 days. So I think that I'm just currently working on many different projects, as you just mentioned. One of the biggest project in Asia, in Vietnam, and also Ukraine, and also here in the United States. So what I'm actually just trying to do is deliver another version of the definition, and also the framework and how the smart city should be built. I totally agree with Debra, because our mission and philosophy is based on human. So human-centric smart city kind of concept should be well spread out among the leadership of the government and also industries. Because I was a little bit just nervous, and sometimes I was just frustrated with some kind of the ideas from the government end in Asia, in some areas, and even in Africa or the Middle East. Because most of the smart city development projects and initiatives are basically controlled by the central government, which is really top-down initiatives. So there's like kind of the missing point that gather the information and also the basic concept, how they start with the smart cities. The thing is, new city development, which is kind of creating something from scratch, is kind of the zero basis. I mean, there's no data and no people. The thing is, just like the fingerprints of human being, every city, every regions, they have different, culture and history, and everything is different. So in each, the towns or regions and cities, they have their own characteristics and their own definitions. So our mission to the government is to define their challenges and also the priorities, and to deal with their own problems, and also trying to bring the kind of innovation and ecosystem in the city, because the technologies and solutions is easily to be changed all the time, because we already experienced the first iPhone 1 introduced back in 2008, and now we experience another level of the technologies. We're talking about Tesla's and SpaceX new version, and also the Amazon's, the unmanned, the logistics systems. So we never know what's going to come up to us in 3 years. So that's the kind of the stage of evolution. So we have to keep in mind that technology support humans' activities. We need to focus on the activities of the people and how to do it, and how to build up the governance systems, embracing the citizens and also the poor and the rich and everybody. So that's something that I actually learned, and to share the more insights with experts during this time. Thanks. Hello?
Yeah, so I think the points that you mentioned, Jaewon, is really, and I want to touch that probably and pass a bit to Jewel as well, that is joining us from Africa, and I want to thank her, and as well welcome Dr. Kirk Adams, that joining us from the United States. So Jaewon, one of the biggest challenge we have, and I think actually, to be honest, kudos to you, because it's not easy to do, is precisely, we are a world that has a very strong geopolitics in the sense of dealing, like you said, with centralized systems. And we are talking about decentralized technology and centralized technology, but we have highly centralized governments, which is still probably more than 50% of the world. And then we have the rest of the world that has more democratic systems. And I'm not going to get in politics, but one challenge is definitely we are building technology, we're building business, dealing with all this complexity. And the challenge that we face is how to leverage this, how to understand this, and as well wisely not forget our humanity. Because in the end of the day, wherever you are, in a more democratic country or less democratic country, we are all humans. And I think some people try to divide us, but I think probably the division doesn't solve any problems. It's narrative and the positive narratives. So Peter, one of the things is, and I think for you and for all the people here, is how do you deal with that? Because I know coming from South Korea, working in UK, now stuck in New York, working with Ukraine, Vietnam, and a lot of other countries around the world is not easy. So I want to touch that, because I think we never touched that in this panel, but I think it's important to touch that, of course, in a wise way, and I know that you're very wise on that, but understand some nuances on that.
Right. So what I actually just mentioned about kind of the systems should be changed, because the things changed. And also the new generation, they actually have the biggest voices ever. And they suffer from COVID-19. So probably within a couple of years, nobody expects exactly how the world will be changed, which direction the world is going to. So everybody's talking about decentralization, including the Bitcoin's fever and the blockchain's fever now. But I assume that this kind of fever is exactly same as the beginning of 2000. New millennium, we just experienced another level of venture boom and venture fever. And now we experience the new companies such as Microsoft, and also the version of Apple. And lots of companies replace the NASDAQ, or even the New York Stock Exchange, Dow Jones Index. So this is actually happening in every probably 20 years, if you actually see it, the beginning of the millennium. But from my guess, it will be actually just changing very quickly. So we see that every big shift of the things in every 10 years or maybe less. So, the government system cannot really control everything. And just an easy example for everybody's understanding this kind of terms. For example, if the country trying to export, import, you have to just get access to every different layers. There are so many membranes between kind of the invoice and also the insurance, and also you have to go to the kind of the legal process. So this is very dynamic, but also it takes a longer time. It's very complicated. But if you have some certain ideas to making the air or water clean, or maybe trying to sell your ideas to the public, you can easily get access to online, and also you can share your ideas with unknown group of people. So this is so fast. The regulatory systems cannot chase that kind of speed. So I think the way of the building the smart city will be, my definition is smart city 3.0 or maybe 4.0, because the gesture or the process of smart city controlled by the systems, existing systems of the government. That was actually before and post pandemic, and there will be the level of the mutual collaborations. Probably maybe we can talk about blockchain can be part of a big agenda and to build up the kind of collaborative smart cities. The smart city is kind of noun, the general noun term, and that will be actually changed to something different because every city they have a distinctive definition or characteristics of the cities or town. So I think that another terms will be required throughout the pandemic and post-pandemic.
Thank you, Peter. So, Jewel, I want to go to you. So, Jewel, thank you so much for joining us. You're joining us from Nigeria. And just for the people not knowing much about Jewel, and I think, Jewel, you could introduce yourself because everyone in the team is already quite well known, but I think it would be good if you could make an introduction. So, Jewel is a board member of a group, an investment group in Nigeria, but as well a researcher and as well someone that is coming from an engineer background. And I think she's quite unique because she's, although a mix of Nigerian and UK with background in the US as well. So you have a bit of different parts of the world knowledge and experience. So I would like to see how you see, especially the nuances between working and growing in the UK as well and studying, and as well now being based in or being between the UK and Nigeria and working with the Nigerian group. So I would like to touch that because I think Africa, of course, is the next continent, or it has been always the oldest continent, at least in human footprint, but as well right now is the youngest in terms of population. And I know that you're very focused as well in education. So can you tell us first about you and how you see the challenges with Africa, with Nigeria, and as well your experience between different cultures and the different parts of your work?
Hi, Dennis. I don't know if I actually heard the whole conversation I just had because my connection is not so great. Apologies for that. Can you repeat?
Yeah, so a bit about you first. Yeah. So, Jewel, I will repeat. So if you could tell us a bit about you, and second about, no, I think we lost her. So, yeah, we lost her. So I think Dr. Kirk Adams, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. So I want to go for you straight away. So I have a lot of respect for your work, and I actually saw the interview with Debra, and I was very inspired. So I think, first of all, you represent a big organization that is the American Foundation for the Blind, but as well you are a PhD and a researcher that has been doing a fantastic work between bridging a lot of different worlds. So I would like to touch a bit, if you could tell us a bit about your background,
sure,
and as well how you've been actually dealing with first of all, of course, your disability, but as well making that as an empowering tool, and as well leading the American Blind Foundation, and as well your work on research.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have not used this platform before, and I'm blind, totally blind. I'm using VoiceOver on an iPhone. So I know I unmuted my microphone. I don't know if my camera is off or on.
It's off
now. Yeah.
It's off. Let me take 1 second and see if I can fix that, since I dressed up for you, Debra.
And we really appreciate the work that they do at the American Foundation for the Blind. They also support Americans that are blind, that have vision loss, but they also support Americans that are deaf blind, which I think is an important point to bring up too as he gets his camera coming.
Can you see the turn on camera? Double tap.
And Dr. Adams, if you can't turn it, we can hear you. Oh, yes, there you go. Now we can. And you did dress up. You look like a.
Thank you so much.
A politician.
So thank you so much for including me. I am in Sedona, Arizona today. And I am Dr. Kirk Adams. I am President and CEO of the American Foundation for the Blind. And as we do for accessibility, I'll give some visual information for other blind individuals on the call. So I am a white male with silver hair. I'm wearing a gray jacket, white shirt, a green and tan tie, and behind me are some gray curtains. At the American Foundation for the Blind, we use research and data, and we work with policy and decision makers to create a world of no limits for people who are blind. So my field of study is leadership and change. My PhD is in leadership and change. So I'm not a technology person. I'm not a Luddite. I use technology every day, from very simple, basic slate and stylus to take Braille notes, voiceover on the iPhone, the JAWS screen reading software with an 80-character Braille display. I have an Android-based Braille note taker on my lap. I have a manual Perkins Brailler on my desk at home, desk at work. So technology can be simple. It can be complex. It holds so much promise for people who are blind around the world. So at AFB, Helen Keller was our brand ambassador for 45 years. She traveled the world advocating on behalf of people who are blind and deafblind. We are in our 100th year. We do have some wonderful virtual centennial events on our website available to all of you at afb.org/100, afb.org/100. So we invite you to enjoy. So reflecting on the topics of today, redesigning cities, nations, governments, smart cities, blockchain, AI, the fourth industrial revolution, society 5.0, the omnipresence of AI and robotics and cloud computing and Internet of Things and XR, making our society more inclusive, more human-centered by using more advanced technologies. My initial reaction, my initial reaction is a bit of unease, holding those concepts of making things more human by using more technology. So I have cautious optimism. I've seen what technology can do on the positive side of the ledger, but I have some grave concerns because I've also seen the barriers that the digital divide can create for people with disabilities. Obviously, we look at things through the lens of blindness. So I'm a blind person. My retina is detached, both detached when I was 5 years old. Became totally blind within a couple of days. So from living as a sighted child to living as a blind child. People with disabilities traditionally have been viewed under a medical model, really considered as a broken thing that needs to be fixed. And by definition, being broken, not as valuable, not as able to contribute at the same level as a person without an impairment. And obviously, we need to think about when an impairment leads to a disabling condition. So I have an impairment in that I don't have vision. If I'm sitting at my board meeting and I have my financial statements in front of me in Braille, I'm not in a disabling situation. I can perform the functions fine. If I don't have Braille and someone hands me a stack of print, then I'm interacting, my impairment is interacting with the environment in a way that creates a disabling condition. So we think about that a lot. And I use analogies often when I talk to large groups. I say, is anyone in this audience 5'2" or shorter? What do you do if you need to get something off a shelf that's 8 feet high? You cannot interact with your environment without some accommodations. You need a tool. You need a step stool. You need to put together a team. You need to find a tall friend. So some of these concepts are not very complicated, but they're important. So I have deep experience with the medical model of disability, And I see we have before us an opportunity to move beyond that medical model and really have a deep understanding of what it means to be human and how humans really interact with the world. And I think often of a terrible incident of a woman in a wheelchair here in actually it was here in Arizona, being killed by an early prototype of an autonomous vehicle because the AI could not decide if the object was a pedestrian or not. The data points that went into the understanding of what a pedestrian did not match the appearance of this woman in a wheelchair. So ultimately, the decision was that this object is not a human. So if we're thinking about creating a human-centered world, who gets to decide what humans look like and sound like and move like? What is a human? My assumption is that everyone I'm speaking to right now is committed to creating a truly inclusive world, and I don't need to convince you that this is an imperative for the future of our world. But with these unfolding technologies, the possibilities of creating that inclusion are truly limitless. And how do we assist in this unfolding? Too often through history, we've seen technological advancements as a race of the swiftest to the finish line, and marginalized groups, including people with disabilities, people who are blind, get forgotten in the process and left behind or left out. And I've had the experience as the only blind student in a middle school physical education class, literally standing on the sidelines while my sighted classmates played games and ran races. And first and foremost, that's very hurtful and disempowering for an individual, but it also harms us all when we're not able to be inclusive of everybody. And when we say everybody, we mean everybody. And we know that as we just talked about the incident of the wheelchair user being struck by an autonomous vehicle, we know there's implicit bias, lurking in the heart of AI, for instance. And as all of you know better than I do, AI is based on data points, and blindness is a low incidence disability. So as a result, the lived experience of blind people is proportionally proportionally represented in the data. It's very low. So, the data skews towards sighted or non-disabled people. So without intending it, there's built-in bias in what we're doing. More barriers for people with visual disabilities as data tilts towards sighted feedback, user data. And Debra mentioned deaf-blind people. So when you add in additional disabilities, there are additional layers of complication here. If a person has a mobility impairment, a visual impairment, hearing impairment, cognitive processing. So there's lots of combinations in what we call humanity. And the art, I think, as well as the science is to be cognizant of all of these differences that we have and create systems that look at these differences as strengths and assets, and rather than as things to be fixed or things to be worked around. So people who are blind or low vision do have a really unique and underrepresented perspective on technology. So just a simple example, listening to and talking to technology is nothing new to us as blind people. Audio books are ubiquitous now. AFB created talking books in the 1930s on phonograph records, so blind people could have access to literature. In college, I was an anomaly, listening to my economics textbooks on 4-track cassettes. So that speaks to universal design. Those audio technologies pioneered by people who are blind are are benefiting billions of people now. Another point I wanted to make today is privacy. It's a particular concern for people who are blind. You know, for a long time, blind people have been used to trading off our privacy in order to gain access to services and information. For instance, many blind people rely on friends and family, or you know, perhaps a paid assistant or a volunteer to read things like bank statements and bills and to fill out medical forms. And it's very exciting that technology offers the promise of personal privacy, or does it? You know, there's lots of concerns about human-assisted technology. If you're allowing someone access to your telephone and they are looking through your camera and they're helping you with a task, you know, what other information do they have access to? So, you know, when properly planned and designed, technology can really maximize benefits and privacy for people with disabilities to a degree that we've never had before. But the benefit is only achievable if products are accessible. They're designed with that full view of humanity in mind, disability-centric privacy, for instance, in mind. So, you know, I think these concerns underscore the importance of independent access. Ideally, an individual with a disability, a blind person myself, should be able to use a device or service just like a person without an impairment, without someone else's direct interaction. These issues are being highlighted right now by current debates in the United States about various methods of voting. For instance, what's allowable and permissible, what would constitute a private ballot. What does that mean for people with disabilities, people who are blind? There's a recent court case involving a grocery store chain called Winn-Dixie, where a blind gentleman brought a case to court saying he wasn't able to access their website, and their response is, you know, we're providing you this other way. We're providing you this number you can call and you can talk to a person and get the information that you need. And this gentleman is contending that that is not true accessibility. And our Americans with Disabilities Act does not address the digital environment. So do digital environments need to be fully and independently accessible, or just accessible enough? You know, who gets to decide that? And you know, these questions extend to all facets of everyday life: going to work, doing your job, going out for a meal, going to school. You know, aside from implicit bias and privacy concerns, I believe we can redesign our cities, our nations, our governments to be more inclusive via the unfolding of technology, and giving the potential for greater independence across the board. The fact that universal design truly does benefit everybody. It's going to be like flying an airplane while we rebuild it. But I think we build and rebuild using what we know about universal design, with a steadfast commitment and philosophy to inclusion. Part of our ongoing daily conversation is that accessibility for people who are blind should not be an afterthought. That it should be accessibility included in the design of advanced technologies. People who are blind, people with disabilities, other marginalized groups should be included as co-creators. So that means being a true part of the process. So, you know, in your work, I implore people, do not create a disability advisory council. Bring people with the lived experience of disability into whatever advisory group you would normally be creating to inform your work. Please do hire people with the lived experience of disability into your teams and your work groups. I'd say the shining example that I'm aware of is Microsoft in Redmond, Washington. I live in Seattle, across the lake from Redmond, and they've been very intentional about hiring people who are with disabilities, and from my perspective, the leading job in bringing people who are blind into all of their work groups, not just to work on accessibility, but as project managers, product managers across the board, not in specialized accessibility roles, but in general roles. And it's made a huge difference for them in their corporate culture and in their deliverables. I'd say if you need some help in thinking about how to be more inclusive of people with lived experience of disability in your work, Debra is a great resource. I am willing, happy, delighted to help as I can. My email address is kadams, KADAMS @afb.org. The appropriate timing for integrating accessibility is at the beginning. And, I say often the best time to put the baking powder in the cake is when you're mixing the batter, not after you take it out of the oven. And, with that, American Foundation for the Blind thanks each and every one of you for all you're doing to create a world of no limits for everybody. And I don't know, Debra, if there's a opportunity for questions and answers. I need to jump off this call in about 5 minutes, but I'm here for you for 5.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kirk Adams. It's an honor to have you here. And as I have as well someone in my family that is blind, so I have a lot of sensibility for what you're doing. But I think what I love about your work is, like you said, is that independent of your disability, that for me just makes you more powerful, because I think it makes you having, like you said, from your childhood to have the double of efforts to build everything, but you create all the things. So one of the things that I would like to ask, and we have limit time. So what would be the biggest challenge you see as someone that is leading, of course, a big organization in the US? The challenge that you see for people with disabilities, what could be, so for business and organizations around the world that are listening to us, in a very summary, of course, we giving you time, what would be the best things that you could tell them, besides, of course, hiring people, but as well in concrete things? So how can we make the technology more inclusive? How can we actually get concrete things that can make a change?
Yeah. I think it's involvement of people with disability in the work, really, because it's about perception. And again, that medical model is the way the world views people with disabilities. So people with disabilities are viewed as liabilities, as problems to be solved, as things to be fixed. So the concept that we are trying to scale is that disability is an asset. It's an asset that looks different than other assets, but living every day as a blind person since the age of 5, I've had the opportunity to develop skills and characteristics. Neuroscience shows this. So as far as problem solving and the way you address problems and the way you develop problem solving capability is by facing problems and solving them, facing challenges and solving them. So creative problem solving capacity in people with disabilities, resilience, grit, flexibility, the ability to work in teams, the ability to clearly communicate, the ability to listen and understand, intuition. There's a book called The Talent Code I would invite you all to read, and it's really about how people develop, how do athletes become great athletes, how do musicians become great musicians. It's by doing and developing and scaffolding, taking steps up the ladder, and people with disabilities really develop unique perspectives, characteristics, capabilities that are valuable and can help us all as humanity to move forward. So I think that's it. is to scale that concept. And the way that happens is through experience. So I can sit here and talk to you about the capabilities of blind people all day long. But if you hire a blind person, who of course meets all your other qualifications, that exposure, I mean, we're research-based. So research shows that if a work group hires a person with a disability, they're 10, 12, 14 times more likely to hire another person with a disability than a work group that hasn't done it before. Including people with disabilities, research shows increases the morale of a work group, the efficiency, reduces absenteeism and turnover, leads to better customer perception of a company if they're inclusive of people with disabilities. So to stop to stop pontificating, it's really to scale the concept that disability equals assets and unique assets, and the way to create that understanding is through actual experience of interaction with people with disabilities. So hire a person with a disability if you have the opportunity to do hiring.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kirk Adams. And I think for people listening to us around the world, like I said before, there's 1.1 billion people with disabilities. I think it's not so easy to find organizations and as well to collaborate. Debra has been one of, you can find through Debra website and the platforms, but as well, Dr. Kirk Adams will put links in the panel. I want to thank you. I know that you have to leave, but it's been fantastic. And and I really appreciate.
Off with the suit and tie, Debra, and on with the t-shirt and out. Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Dr. Adams.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really good.
Thank you. Jewel, if your internet is a bit better, so I would like to go back right now to your question. Yeah, thank you. No worries. So I think so. My question was about a bit about background of you, and as well. So we passed from the challenges with the include disabilities, but of course in your case you are a very successful businesswoman, but you've been as well working between, of course, the best of UK and the best of Nigeria, but you've been as well between these two worlds. So I would like to touch, because that is something that people don't have that part of understanding of the different cultures, and in this case, of course, two diametrical opposite cultures, but as well the challenge that it is to grow between the two worlds. And as well, I would like to touch in the second part of the question a bit of your work as well with education and how you see the young people, because of course Africa is the continent with more young people, and as well a lot of fantastic minds and things going on.
Oh, thanks, Dennis, for putting me on this. This is probably the most amazing panel I've been on, to actually witness someone with disabilities talk so passionate about it. I'm just like, I'm blown away, because obviously in Africa, phone just went off. Okay, yeah, can you guys still see me?
Yeah. Continue.
Yeah, in Nigeria, in Africa, there isn't really a possibility of someone being hired with a disability. This just does not happen. So for listening to Dr. Kirk, it's really like a game changer right there when he talks about how that is actually has a lot of advantages, which is quite interesting. And I'm quite interested to actually carry that through in my company. So I would obviously like to take part in what you guys are doing, Debra, and also getting involved in that, because, you know, in Africa, it's almost like you have to hide away when you have a disability. And when we talk about disability, I'm going to have to mention the older generation that don't even know how to use a computer. I have no idea how to make any kind of transaction on any kind of digital banking system, and they have to get their grandchildren or their sons are not able to access the internet. So it's sort of like they have a disability in a way, because they're not able to, you know, apply for their visa, renew their passport, because everything is not like how it used to be when we could just like fill out a form and then you can just go to the post office and post it. But now you have to do everything digital. And it's again, even just a COVID test. You can't just like say, okay, I'm just going to like, just, walk in and get a COVID test, and everything is digitalized, and it's very challenging for older generation. So, I do feel bad for the people from the ages of 70 to 100 or 200, and because they're not going to be able to have the sort of like comfort of enjoying this digital transformation. So, there's a big gap in there, and I do hope that we think about them as well, and making sure that they're comfortable with these new changes that are happening very fast and very quickly. I also, before I forget, I also want to say congratulations to one of the winners, Rupert Runovich, and he won the Big Data Award today, and I'm very, very proud of him, because I know that he's all about big data and using big data in privacy, in terms of data, that people are able to know what happens to their data. Google just takes my data. I have no clue what happens to it. It just, it's just Google, Instagram, Facebook. I just feel like I'm being raped. I'm sorry, I have to use that word, because it just feels like no one's asking me before they just use my information or tell me suggestions. I didn't ask for suggestions. I didn't ask to see this ad. But, it's nice to know that with Rupert's new product that he's the co-founder of, he's the actual founder, he's creating something that kind of like limits, that gives people comfort in giving data to companies that they know that they respect their data, and they know that they're comfortable with what happens to their data, and they actually know what's going on in terms of hotel, when it comes to accommodation, traveling, and all that sort of stuff. Because as we get into these new changes in terms of traveling, you are going to have to figure out, like, plan ahead. You really have to plan ahead. I mean, I was invited to a party, and I was like, I'll come. And I go, hang on a minute, I haven't had my COVID test. I can't just get on a plane and I can't do spontaneous traveling anymore. I have to have a COVID test, and I have to get it done. I have to wait, 24 to 48 hours. So things are changing, and because of that, we need to have a system, and there's systems in place, obviously, like Verify, all the new apps coming up that help you to sort of plan ahead for your holidays, your planning, and everything is just makes it more easier. So I guess the whole digital transformation will be around making things easier for us, so that we don't have to panic, and then last minute we're at the airport and realize, oh shit, I can't travel. Oh, excuse my French. I can't travel because I don't have all the requirements, because I didn't know about the requirements. Because these days, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like everyone's getting slower with information or understanding what we really need to get to where we need to get to, and they're not even provide us any information. So, it's are we relying too much on data, or are we relying too much on digital information to make decisions? That's something that I question. And in terms of like, I listened to Debra talking about, she talked about humanization and all that kind of beautiful stuff. At the same time, I'm also worried about kids not being able to go and touch the ground and touch the soil and play with dirt, because they're too busy on the digital life. There needs to be a sort of like, you don't dig a hole by pressing a button 5 times and then the hole gets bigger, and now you have to go outside and do these things. So I just don't want kids to lose some of the other bits of, like, being human in terms of like doing things outside, and then also understanding how you can use digital information or transformation, all these new geeky stuff that can actually empower you. And that's where Africa is kind of like in both worlds. There's still that rustic, rural areas that are like have no clue what's going on in the cities, and then you have the people in the cities that are just like going full throttle, steam ahead, just going crazy. And so yeah, I guess Africa has got that sort of like both worlds. So you can be in that digital world 1 minute, and then you can just get on the boat, and the next thing you're in the middle of nowhere and just like enjoying nature and having no 5G hitting your brain cells. Yeah, so so that's sort of like my perspective of all of this. But I would say that just having these kind of conversations is really eye-opening. It's just amazing, and to know that in a way there's we have to like look at all our disabilities and sort of like work together as a team, and to be united and not separate ourselves and to focus too much on consumer market, trying to fix the consumers and get sales going on. It's really a case of we all have to kind of like work as a team and know that collectively we can do something extremely powerful, and we should not lose that. just because of the next big product coming up. That's my take on this.
Thank you, Jewel. And I think I know that you've been doing a lot of work in terms of bridging both your corporate world, but as well in education, with school, with young people. So I want to touch on education and the work you've been doing on that level, because of course, education is critical. And I think as being part of an investment group and as well being an engineer, how do you see, you touch the young people obsession with digital, and all of us, not just the young people, I think all of us spend, of course, these tools are fantastic, they're very addictive, but I think the challenge and what I've been seeing especially is everyone is using the tools, but most of people don't know how to use them to empower themselves or actually to create value for them. So I want to touch that because I know as well that between, of course, you have a great education in the best universities and you've been living in the UK, but as well, when you go to Africa, like you said, you can be in a very big urban area and you have millions of people. Then you suddenly get to the suburban area and things change completely and you get in a completely different dimension. So there's a lot of much more radical change. So how do you see this thing, especially in using these tools to empower people? And at the same time, of course, creating business and creating normal lives, because it's what everyone needs. Like you mentioned, we cannot live without business, without having our revenues, without having those things. But I think right now we are in a very paradox on that level. So I would like to listen from you, especially as being an engineer as well in terms of education.
Okay, let's. I would like to touch on the educational system. So in a typical middle-class society, most parents, well, let's talk about my generation. I won't tell you how old I am, but in my generation, what happens is most parents send their kids abroad to go to school, to go to secondary school, go to college, get a degree. And once they've got the degree, most of the time, the sons have to come back to their home country, for example, Nigeria, and take over their dad's business or whatever that is, so that they can, continue the family business. And this is changing a lot now because the parents these days are actually becoming want to have more of a connection with their children, because our generation, we were quite comfortable not knowing our parents or having anything to do with them, and knowing that we do have parents, but they can be far away, we don't care. But the new generation are coming up with this need to bond and create this relationship, have breakfast at the table and all that kind of good stuff. So they want to have their kids closer to home. So what's happening now is that most of the younger generation are wanting their kids to go to school in Nigeria. And what does that mean for us? Well, again, our generation we can consider ourselves to be entrepreneurial and future philanthropists. So what we're doing at the moment is building the new schools. There are lots of private secondary schools, lots of private universities, not many kids, but it's just the fact that they're giving them the best education possible so they can stay in-house and in the country and develop themselves in Nigeria. So that's new because 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. There weren't any good universities, but in today, we've got a lot of private universities that have been set up by people like us that have made a lot of money and want to give back to the community. So we spend our money building schools and partnering with other schools internationally or other business partners internationally as well. If you think about it, I mean, every single most powerful person in Africa is going back to either creating an entrepreneurship program like Tony Lumelu Foundation, which is a program where he put $10 million aside for 1,000 people every year. They get $10,000 to start up their businesses, and they give them some sort of mentoring, and there's some sort of like boot camp and that sort of thing. That's an example. And you've got other people who are doing really well, saying, okay, I'm going to build a school in my hometown or in my village because that's what I want to give back. So they set up these foundations under their parents' name or their grandfather's name, but it's to build this entrepreneurial spirit to help others to develop their skills, because things are changing in terms of like, it's not just about going to school anymore. It's about what skills can you bring to the universe, and what skills do you need? Do you want to be a makeup artist? Let's build a trade school. And so there's all these ideas coming up that to help empower the younger generation. And that's a big, huge shift for a country whereby it was just specific universities and schools that were being governed by institutions, to like having this really like private sector where all the universities now, the best ones, are being owned by individuals like ourselves. And a good example would be like my mother also has a school, and it's called Infant Jesus Academy. It's a secondary school, and again, it's situated in a place called Asaba, which is in Delta State. Delta State is the region where all the major oil and gas activity happens. So expats are mostly found in this area. So they do know that, okay, if they want to send their kids to school, there's a really good school they can take them to that is local and give them some sort of like cultural upbringing, because it's not going to be such a westernized school. It's going to come in with all the cultural things that the Africa energy brings into schools. So that's a good example. And then those kids, they get their education, they finish their secondary school, they're grounded, they understand more about their culture, they understand more about living in the community with the same sort of cultural and religious background, all the stuff that their parents want them to kind of like put into them, and then they go to university in America or in the UK or anywhere else. So it's just giving them that great foundation before they take off and go somewhere else. And again, with what I do with the Infant Jesus Academy is I help young kids to sort of like not so much let their parents decide for them what they want to become when they grow up, because most parents in Nigeria, they want their kids to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Those are the only jobs you're allowed to like think about having. If you decide you want to become an artist or a sculptress, forget about it. They're not even going to it's not even an option. So I sort of like create in them this ability to actually look outside the box and look at things that they're passionate about, that they actually enjoy doing, and have that parallel to that doctor or lawyer degree that they're supposed to go for. And so it helps them to kind of like go into that, understanding their soft skills and what they're passionate about, what their hobbies are, and using that as a way to fuel them into looking at becoming, a bit of, you can be a doctor as well as you can be an artist. Just like you, Dennis, you're an artist and you're also like a fintech guy. So it's just giving the kids the ability to enjoy some of their God-given talent that their parents seem to suppress, and then so that they can be actually enjoy, if it's to sing or do something really artistic, that opportunity is available for them.
Thank you so much. And you're right. I think these different parts of the personalities are very important. So I want to pass to you, and thank you so much, Jewel, for joining us with your power energy. It's very inspiring. I think we're going to have still around 20 minutes. So I want to pass to you, Hilton. So as my partner, and as well someone that came actually from Africa and then study in the UK and around the world. And as well, we've been, I think in your case, it's reverse engineering, because you've been actually working some of the biggest organizations in the world. And now you are in the startup world, changing the world with digital. So I think a bit of your background for people listening to us, I think is cool as well. And I think it's important as well, that journey, because you have a wisdom of a lot of things you did, failures and successes, and a lot of successes as well. But as well, it's important to see from big corporations to startups the nuances, which I think is important as well to redesign cities. Because there are people that live in corporations, people that live in startups or micro SMEs, but the majority is in micro SMEs. Yeah. The corporations are a very small part of the population. You're on mute.
No, thank you very much for that, Dinis. You've embarrassed me. One of the interesting things about my journey to where we are today, and I'm sitting here in Portugal, is it's been incredible, because I learned a lot being brought up in Africa. Africa had incredible amounts of prejudice built into the political system, which was the ultimate reason for why my parents were basically forced to leave the apartheid regime of South Africa. And the education system was very much, particularly at home, my parents were incredibly liberal in the way that of thinking. And we were very fortunate to, I didn't know about prejudice until I went to school. Let's look at it that way. And when we went to England and I was educated there, I was very conscious of differences because I was a different person. I may be, I came from Africa and I was, living in England, and I was treated as a foreigner. It was very, very bizarre. Very, very, very interesting. So you understand how society has mechanisms in place and prejudices in place that exclude people from, whether it's a class system or it's a racial system or socioeconomic systems. It's very, very it's very visible, and you experience it. And through my education and then through work, one of the interesting things, I was very interested in technology and utilized technology a lot in the investment and banking career that I had, big organizations. And even I do recall there were a couple of occasions when we did have people who had limited accessibility issues who worked and did jobs very, very well and better than most people because of that. If you're working on designing quantitative programs for investment management, it's a sedentary job. So you don't need to be, a 100 meters sprint athlete in order to achieve that. So it's more, the environment is in a way accessible for people who have certain skills and have some we all have accessibility issues. I still can't run 100 meters under 15 seconds or 20 or ever, I think. But anyway, so working with very large organizations was very exciting. I traveled a lot. I went all over the world. I traveled a lot in Africa, mainly in Europe and Africa, Northern Europe in particular. And I saw this disparity. I saw the difference. And then I saw the early days of some form of empowerment in terms of bringing accessibility to the financial markets, and that through technology. And it was a simple thing, just like M-Pesa. M-Pesa through the mobile phone with the ability for people to actually exchange value with each other through the transference of data as a monetary value. That was really, 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 an innovation that really, really empowered incredible amounts of people. And and then when I was living in Gibraltar and working with and growing companies and startups in the beginning of DLT, I really, really enjoyed working in small teams and small companies to actually build something that actually could, and I don't like the word disrupt, I like to use it more of a term of enabling and sort of looking at the world from a different perspective. That was really, really, really powerful. And, over that period of time, I got to meet Dinis and Serafima and a lot of the work that they've started doing in the beginning. And there was a meeting of the minds that we all had the same shared vision that really wanted to change the world and make and leave a legacy that we actually will be doing something for humanity. And I'm really delighted to share the stage today with Debra, with all the great work that you're doing with in terms of accessibility. I'm learning from you every day because I have the same vision, but the lexicon is really, really important of how we engage and work with our common humanity in such a way that they don't feel excluded. That we don't within our lexicon create natural barriers, even barriers based on misogyny or implying things that actually which are embedded in the lexicon of society, which is really bad. It's the terms used, boys don't cry sort of attitude. This is just embedding a bias in society, which is, I think, unhealthy. So anyway, I've prattled on for far too long, but at the end of the day, I've had an incredible 2.5 days working with a great team. I've listened to the most amazing people and visionaries talk about, all the subjects to do with how technology can enable cities and people and societies, and the particular work that we did earlier on was it Tuesday morning when we launched the Index DNA, Cities ABC Index DNA, with Professor Kiran, who led that for us. And that is really a way of ranking cities according to how sustainable they are, how accessible they are, how smart they are, how they can working in terms of the United Nations Sustainable Goals, etc., etc. Very, very powerful framework that we put together. Now, the key thing here is if you look at most sustainable indices, or most smart city indices that are produced by the various reports, they are static. They're not dynamic, and they sit in silos, and nobody has access to it apart from being published somewhere. And the thing I love about this index is that if you look at most indices, they tend to be a proxy for rich countries. So you get, you're looking at how sustainable is Amsterdam versus Berlin or Tokyo or New York. Those are just who wants to know that? I want to know is how is the governance and the policies of Kigali, so with the Rwandan government, or the government of in Botswana, and the governance structure and the tools that they're using to engage with the citizen as the center and empowering the citizen, and what impact does that have on the daily life and the quality of life of the individuals, which is incredibly powerful way of saying, okay, you can have actually Kigali being much more beneficial to its citizens than the people living in New York. It's not a proxy for wealth. It's a proxy of quality of life. It's accessibility and things like that. So anyway, that's my penny's worth of what we've discussed over the last 2.5 days, and I'll hand back to my illustrious team.
Thank you so much, Hilton. So Serafima, you've been as well, I think, in the shadow behind the scenes and doing fantastic work. But I think you are as well a very interesting case study of culture, because you come from Russia. You went through all the changes of Russia and the Soviet Union. Of course, quite young still, but right now living in Barcelona and in Europe. So a bit of your background and as well a bit of your summary of this work that you've been doing so far.
Well, thank you, Dinis. Thank you, everyone here. I'm very glad to join this panel. As Dinis mentioned, I count myself as a person of the world, nevertheless very proud of my Russian background. And I studied economics and finance in Russia. Then I moved to London, and there I studied management in oil and gas industry. Unfortunately, I never got to sort of energy sector, but I was very lucky to get into tech sphere and been working in project management and operations for startups for quite a long period of time, working with wonderful small companies, startups, as well as big projects with Barclays Bank and multiple crypto exchanges. Discovered the wonderful world of cryptocurrency and blockchains, and got on the hype of the ICOs, which was like a roller coaster, and very passionate about technology. And since I started working with Dinis, I understood with Dinis and ztudium and Hilton, I understood that we should be enablers of technology, and that the main point of this is to use this technology for the benefits of humanity. Unfortunately, it is not a straightforward problem, and it is impossible or desirable to turn the clock back on the digital transformation. And of course, it's not always easy to re-engineer operations without losing the personal touch. Like Dr. Kirk mentioned today, we need to add the baking powder while we're baking the cake from the very beginning. But unfortunately now lots of businesses and companies found themselves, or even cities found themselves in a situation when there is already operational system. Therefore, this is said it's particularly a good moment now to remember that efficiency won't get us anywhere without implying emotional intelligence to it. Especially in the times of COVID-19, we all struggle and go through go through other issues, working under extraordinary stressful conditions. Many people are isolated and forced to work from home. They probably don't have such a big access to technology or don't know how to use it. worried about their jobs, health, families, and loved ones. And this being said, we need to ensure that technology that we have at our feet, we use it, we spread it, we share it with people who are around us, and we make this for humanity. What my biggest takeaway from the summit that we have built with our wonderful partners, World Smart Cities Forum and Ruth Global Impact, I think that the most important thing is to build a strong ecosystem of partners and to fully realize the capabilities of any system we're building, whether it's a smart city, a business, or a small company. Connecting inclusion and technology will create the benefits for people, businesses, environment, and everybody around us. And so partnerships and great teams, I think, are neighbors of all this good that's possible to bring to the world. And with this, I want to say big thank you to all our team who is behind the scenes, been doing the summit, Nguyen, Arnaldo Turillo, Marcos Rifinsky, Steven Silva, George Fileri. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. Hilton, Supra, Jane Tran, and our designer, Huyen. Yes, we wish her very good health. She's in a very good personal moment now. Thank you, everyone. It's a big, big pleasure, and big thank you to all our team. And of course, Alamgir. I forgot to mention Alamgir, who's been great support as well.
And actually Buran as well from Bangladesh. So we have a team all over the world, everyone working for this. So we are wrapping up. So I think I would like to give a bit of word, and of course the team, and of course Peter, that has been unstoppable, and you, Debra, and your team. So I think one of the things I would like to do just as wrap up. So I think just I don't know, Debra, Peter, and Jewel, if you want to give a bit of a last word about some hope. I think I always like to finish with let's say Javed Jafri, the Bollywood actor and producer. One of the things he mentioned that is very beautiful, the idea of passion and compassion. And for me, I think is the humanity-centric perspective, which I think is going to be probably my new motto. I love instead of human-centric, humanity-centric. I think it's much more intelligent, and I think it's very important because, like Dr. Kirk Adams, for instance, if the Tesla that actually right now is creating actually is a big right now legal and in terms of AI didn't distinguish someone in a wheelchair, we have a lot of work to do. So the bias is actually not just about the color, but even about disability. So we have a lot of issues that we have to tackle. But I want to pass the word to you because everyone is, I think, here is working on these things. It's just the way we can actually right now make a difference. But as well, I think my last word is that what I've been believing after working with big organizations worldwide is I think we have much more power than we think. All of us, everyone listening to us around the world. And it's the way we use the tools. It's about the tools. I think one of the challenges of our society right now is definitely these tools can be more powerful than any time in history of humanity. And there's no even a discussion about that. But at the same time, they are so fantastic if you use it right. So it's about using, like Dr. Kirk Adams was using the computer alone, and they managed to get into StreamYard without seeing, and just using voice recognition technology. So effectively, and he's a PhD, okay? He's not the person that is with pity of himself. So I think it's and as well, my father is a disabled person. I am very proud. He never had any problem, never complained, and he suffered a lot his life, and as well. So I think what I see is that, like you said, Jewel, the young people are spending, let's say, 60 to 90% of their time in social media. They are awakened, even as adults. So can we use this right now, not just to be, like you said, Jewel, somehow treated by these organizations unilaterally, and in some ways as well raping, which is a very strong keyword coming from a lady, but I understand because I think we all feel that a bit. But at the same time, it's not just feeling that, it's that we are talking about companies that have a power never in history was possible. And that is very important as well. Even the biggest dictators didn't have this power. So I think right now we have as well to understand that the power is us. So it's about the way we use this, and we can create something more interesting. So pass the word to Debra, Jaewon, and Jewel.
Well, I will just say that one thing that I love about what we're doing with the Open Business Council is that we're not just having these conversations from Silicon Valley. It's so important that Jewel be in these conversations, and Peter is in these conversations, and Serafima. And I think I really think you should be proud of what y'all accomplished, Dinis and Hilton and Serafima, because pulling in leaders from all over the world, because we are not going to solve these problems by talking about them to ourselves in the United States. And also, the community of people with disabilities, we are not, that's one reason why we're creating Billion Strong, because unfortunately, we have not come together to really empower ourselves and embrace our lived experiences with disabilities. And I didn't talk about it a lot, but I've been married for almost 40 years, blessed to be married to a wonderful man. But unfortunately, he has late stage dementia. They're calling it Alzheimer's now. And it is so hard to walk this path. I own my own business. I have a lot of families counting on me getting my business right, but I'm walking this really intense path with my husband. And Dinis talked about his father, and I have a beautiful, amazing daughter that's 34 years old that was born with Down syndrome, and she has something to offer the world. So I think how we start to get things right is we make sure the right people are at the table, and it's a diverse group. We need Africa, all of Africa in these conversations. We need India in these conversations. We need China. China and India, they have 1.4 plus billion people. We need the people in these conversations. And I think this is why when Dinis asked us to get involved, we're like, absolutely, because this is where we really start changing things. And so I just am very hopeful. And I agree with you, Dinis. I think humanity, making sure that we're focusing on humanity as opposed to even humans, I think is the way forward. We do it together, and we don't leave anyone out. We don't leave the youth of Africa out. We don't leave the people of Syria out. We don't leave the people in the Philippines out. So I'll say one more thing. When I first started being asked to speak all over the world, such a blessing. I was invited because I was an American. I was a person that was in the United States. And I would often come into these countries, like I spoke in Kenya, and I would see so much innovation happening there that we certainly aren't seeing in the United States. And so stop assuming because somebody's from one country that we got all the answers. We don't. And also, I think we also have to separate governments from people, because there are things that we do in the United States that I don't think we should be doing, but but at the same time, the people in the United States are beautiful, beautiful people. People in China, beautiful people. So let's let the people decide how we move forward, not the governments. Thank you.
Thank you, Debra.
Peter.
Jewel. Oh, Peter.
Sorry.
I'm really excited to be here again. So, we always talking about sharing the insights, sharing the different perspectives, but I just prefer to say sharing the beautiful mind. So, because mind doesn't discriminate, it's not be discriminated, right? So, sharing the ideas and beautiful minds that combine together, there's something we can just build up a better world. So, it's just always like talking about we are actually the step one. I think maybe the lowest step to go for the another 100, another century. The human being, they already suffer from the biggest one back in the Great Depression, recession back in 1920. Everybody's talking, maybe you remember the Titanic sank during the time, but the same thing. There's like up and down in your lives. I think also this kind of concept applies to the entire human race. So we are in the midst of the very difficult time. I think the next step is maybe putting together all the efforts together to get out of it. So I don't just push people and the government, even the people around me, just no rush and just enjoy. And I think that maybe it's time to open your mind to, I think that this kind of event is kind of the biggest bridge to deliver and convey the messages to all different people in all different countries. I'm the South Korean citizen, but I travel more than 120 countries by now. So my mileage is like more than 2 million, 2.5 million something, but I never counted after 2 million something. And then luckily the pandemic started for me. I mean, so the last 1 year and a half was actually brilliant time to me to just, even though I was sick in my house, I don't have to go to my office in New York City, but I never had this kind of time to think myself and talking to people online or by the mobile phones. So I'm alone, but also on the other side, this is actually such a beautiful time for me to reassess myself, rethink about myself, just go back to my previous years. Then I think this can fuel me for the better myself in the next few years. So I think that everybody has that kind of kind of experience, and we can actually do something more better.
Mm-hmm.
And the partnership together with Dinis and Hilton, Debra, Jaewon, and Serafima, I think this is actually a great moment, so we can just move forward to something much, much better together from now on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was beautifully said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jewel.
Yes. So for me, I would say that, the obstacle is the way. I have nothing negative to say about whatever we're challenged with or whatever we're faced with, because everything happens for divine reason, and it also transforms us. Every single thing, everything that happens to us, there is some sort of transformation that comes from it. Me losing my dad with cancer changed me. I mean, COVID, I got to go inwards, more deep inside me to find out who I really am. So, everything, like when I'm faced with anything, I don't just go, oh no, something's gone wrong. Oh, I actually look at it and say, this is the time to look and to actually experience, to go through the transformation and feel it with realization, with awareness, with all that beautiful mind that we all have. We're not using most of our mind anyway. So it's just to really, tap into our beautiful mind, because we are gifted, we are complete, and we are whole. And as we work together, Open Business Council is doing that by putting us all together, and we're all working together, collectively. These are these are the platforms that we need to help, change the world. That's what I used to say when I do my gratitude sessions. I normally say, thank God for YouTube, because YouTube for me is a way when you want to learn something, just go to YouTube. Okay, I need to know how to, I just stained my shirt. How do I clean this off? And I just go to YouTube and I watch the video and I can clean up a stain. So everything, no matter how, how it might look in some way, you can look at everything in a bad way. But what I tend to do, what we should all do, is look at everything in a way that actually understand that it is there to empower us all. That's my key message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's been a pleasure for everyone still listening around the world. Thank you so much for everyone. We had around, I think, close to 200,000 views on YouTube alone. It's been a lot of work, but I think what it shows as well is that there's much more work to be done. I think we are in the beginning, and I think to all the people that actually follow us in the last 3 days, and as well that can actually continue looking at this series, I hope that we can actually make a difference. Please connect with us. openbusinesscouncil.org is only in the beginning. citiesabc.com is only in the beginning, and even World Smart Cities Forum with Peter and what Debra is doing. I think, Debra, you didn't mention about the 1 million, but I think would be good probably for you to finish with that. But I think there's a lot of work that you can actually do together. And actually, very important thing, the power is in our hands. It's about what you do with that. And of course, this technology is not just about some Silicon Valley crazy people, because they're not crazy. They achieve and they build fantastic tools. It's more about the way we all take ownership of this, and especially take ownership is about responsibility as well. That's very important. That's my last word. And Debra, I would like to talk about the 1 million or 1 billion, sorry, because it's a very interesting project that I think is going to be key for what you're trying to do here.
Well, thank you. And I'll make it real brief, but it's called Billion Strong, and it's billion-strong.org. And I'll let you know, if you go to that website, there's hardly anything on the website. So we just started, but there's so much efforts being made by large multinational corporations that are our clients all over the world to include people with disabilities. And I'm often saying to them, but don't just include people with disabilities in the US and the UK. What about in Africa? What about in Russia? What about in other countries? And so, but so of course, it's all about supply and demand. So we're having demand being created, but the reality is we're not people with disabilities. If most people with disabilities have invisible disabilities. And so if we don't all come together to really embrace and empower our lived experiences with disabilities. I mentioned I had disabilities because I have invisible disabilities as I've aged. I have arthritis in my fingers that I'm now using assistive technology to utilize. I struggle, like a lot of people, with anxiety. I have ADHD, which is really good if you're an entrepreneur. It's a real asset. Many people that are entrepreneurs have ADHD and dyslexia. Well, that's part of the disability organization, the community. So Billion Strong is to really come together with our lived experiences, once again, to show what humanity looks like. We've got to really allow the youth of Africa, I'm looking at Joel, we've got to make sure that they feel proud of their lived experiences. Now we're told, oh, if you have ADHD, you're broken. No, you're not. You actually be a great entrepreneur. So Billion Strong is about identity. It's really, we're taking a page from the LGBT community where they came together, and now in some countries, like in the US, they have marriage equality. Yay. So this is an identity and empowerment organization, and we are so excited to be partnering with Dinis and Hilton and Serafima to make sure our systems are right. And we love that we're going to be partnering with, Peter, and we want to partner with Jewel because we are stronger together. But I made it Billion Strong because often when we talk about people with disabilities, we use little cute things like ableism and look at their differences, abilities. Stop it. They're human beings. We are human beings, and we need to be proud of all of our lived experience. Our lived experience as a woman, our lived experience as a man, our lived experiences as someone with darker color of skin, or let's embrace our differences, our creativeness, our diversity, all the things that we talked about today. Technology is wonderful, but let's make sure it works with humans. But as Jewel said, let's also make sure that we're outside in nature, exploring these beautiful worlds. Hilton says he's surrounded by wine vineyards. So party at Hilton's house. But Billion Strong, billion-strong.org, and we just started. And I'm hoping that Jewel and Peter will join Serafima, Hilton, and Dinis as advisors to this. But let's change the way the world works for more people. Thank you for letting me talk about that, Dinis.
That's
Pleasure and honor.
Thank you so much, Debra. That's amazing.
Thank you.
There's one thing
I've got
to add.
goosebumps all over me. Thank you.
The one thing to add up that the technology is built by human, and cities is built by human.
By human.
Sometimes we forget something, that we are missing out among the technologies, all the things. So we just trying to bring all the values from human being to the main stage. That's the something that every organizations and people here need to collaborate.
Yeah.
Completely. I think that's the wisdom is exactly that. So I want to thank everyone. I think we've been going for almost 2 hours. So wonderful to have you here. This is just the beginning. We'll come back in October with a more advanced, and hopefully we'll prepare it better and do it even better. But I think in the meantime, we'll do a lot of things with Debra, with Jewel, and of course with Peter, that is part of the family. So thank you so much. Wonderful
Thank
to have you all
Thank
here.
you so much, Dennis. That was amazing. Great speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter. Oh, you're all wonderful people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you all.
Everyone, it was wonderful. See you in October.